find some validation because I felt like nobody else was going to give it besides me being just this image of myself that needed to have this identity attached to how I look, how I ate, and that's when everything started.
Welcome to the Mindful Method podcast, where we don't just fill your ears, we fill your mind with the tools to enhance your emotional and physical reality. I'm your host, Jiordana and Sabrina, here to guide you on this journey of the body-brain connection and help you take your power back to create the life you've always wanted. So grab a seat, because class is in session and our method is on the syllabus. Here at the Mindful Clinic, we're not just changing your mind, we're changing your life. One mindful moment at a time. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. Today I am joined by a very special guest named Sabrina. She is a mutual friend from one of my astrologers, Natalie. So we know this is going to be good because we love Natalie. But Sabrina actually has a fairly similar background or story to me. And I just love being able to have conversations with humans who have been through similar experiences and seeing how they've overcome things like eating disorders or, some of these like diseases or these disorders that really a lot of people actually spend their whole lives never overcoming. So I'm sure Sabrina has a lot to offer you guys. I know she is also a Reiki master, so I'd love to dive into that. But welcome to the podcast, Sabrina.
Thank you so much for having me, Jordana. It's so special to be here. I really love what you do. I was telling you about that. And yeah, I think it's important to share about these kind of stories and the things that we overcome around our bodies, around our how we look, around making relationship with ourselves and really connecting with our true essence. Because a lot of the people, especially because of there's a lot of things going on the internet and we see so much and it's sometimes very toxic, it's really important to understand ourselves, and knowing that other people have gone through that, it really gives us an inspiration to connect with ourselves and know what is better for ourselves. So I think that that's one of the reasons why I like sharing about my story, so I can help others know that they can be where we are.
Okay, so on that note, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, what brought you to where you are, and then what you do now?
Yes, of course. So I'm an energy artist. I'm a certified in health coaching, sound and energy healing.
Mm.
And the reason why I started doing all that is because like you mentioned at the beginning, I've struggled with eating disorders all of my life. I'm originally from Peru and I grew up there, and I moved at the age of 25 to the States. And I think that's when I started struggling the most. I have struggled since I was 13 years old when I met my dad for the first time. And it was a lot of battling and not knowing exactly what was happening to me. But when I moved at the age of 25, I went through a hard process of going very deep into my eating disorders. I got bulimia, I got anorexia, I got orthorexia, and I went really deep into it, not knowing exactly what it was, but knowing that something was wrong with me, but just really not knowing how to handle it. Being by myself in a foreign country, I didn't speak the language, I didn't know anyone. So at that time, it felt really lonely, but I was still going through this process of understanding myself without knowing how disconnected I was with myself. So basically, I made a decision after a huge breakup to go backpacking with my twin sister for 5 months. And I think that's when everything started for me to click, to understand how disconnected I was from my body, how disconnected I was from myself, and to really learn all these amazing tools. Because we started in Europe and we just went through all the countries, and then when we ended up in India is when I learned meditation, and we trained with a guru, and he actually gave us all the tools, energy healing. And I was like learning about these new methods that I have never heard before. And I was like, wow, this is so incredible. Like I didn't even know that this existed. And I just started going deeper into that. And he even told me, like, when you're gonna go back, you're going to start meeting people that are going to be doing the same things. And I was like, no way, nobody that acts, that is in my world understands about these things. And he was like, no, your world is going to change right now because you have learned something that has helped you so much. So yeah, when I came back, I just started getting certified in all these methods, and that's what I do right now. I help people really release stuck energy in their bodies, because sometimes when we go through trauma and we go through different very strong experiences, we hold emotions, we hold a lot of energy that is stuck in our bodies. So sometimes we contract all that because we don't really want to feel the pain again of what we went through. So we just stay in a moment where we have this session where we can actually allow ourselves to receive, to explore any pain, to explore any emotion that is stuck in there, so we can breathe through it and release it with ease and peace. So that's what I help people with right now.
Hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so interesting because so much of my practice, like it with my story, the thing that really changed my relationship to my body and relationship to food was learning about like psychology and neuropsychology and this very like academic like very practical. I'm a Virgo if you follow astrology, but I mean I'm sure you do with Natalie. So
Yeah.
I'm a Virgo, so like we're very like practical, has to make sense, has to be logical. And so I really like healed my relationship to food at that time. But you know, it wasn't until a year or two later that I met my now mentor. And she works really in the energetics of things. Like she does the energy work, the body work, the soul healing. And I thought that I had healed already until I met her. And then it's like all you go deeper. And so, you know, I'm definitely somebody who really thrives with like academic information. I identify as being an academic, but there's this whole other world of these like different types of modalities that, you know, even I incorporate in my practice, just like in a different way. But that piece in combination with everything else has actually what has actually allowed me to heal, like really heal on a deeper level. And of course, things always come up, right? But it's so funny if you watch the progression of my practice. Like 5 years ago was a completely different version and a completely different program than what you're getting now. Like more now, I'm just like we meditate on it, we breathe through it, we like go to the emotion in the body, and it doesn't even make like logical sense. Like there's, I mean, I'm sure there's research and stuff behind it, but it is actually the thing that's brought me to full body peace. And so I really resonate with that with you. And I'm so glad that you had that experience. It sounds like it must have been incredible working with a guru. Like that must have just been like, wow.
Yes, it was amazing. And I love what you're saying because it's so true. For example, I always like had this all my life, right? It was part of me. It was part of my identity. It was more than 20 years that I had these eating disorders. And I always thought that that was who I was. And then I think part of me, part of my subconscious, when I started getting certified as a health coach, I started learning more about the body. And that was like the academic part of like learning about all these diseases, and learning about anorexia, learning about bulimia. And then I seen orthorexia. And then I'm seeing all these terms and I'm like, wait a minute, like this is what I do. And everything started to click more like in an academic way, like you say. And then I started going deeper and deeper. And the craziest part about my journey, which I don't think everyone's different, right? But in my case, I went through the whole recovery by myself, but it's something that I had to do because I think I needed to understand myself so deep so I could connect with that part of myself and help others in that way, because that was the
Yeah.
only way. So I started learning uh, all about it, and just going deeper, going through books and just like really going deep, 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 deep. And then when I finally understood what was happening, then I was still able to take the approach on the energetic way. So I think it's important that you approach it in both ways, and that what you're sharing is so amazing because it really like, I am very logical too. I'm a Capricorn, but I like like
Yeah.
I like to understand the things that I'm doing as well. So it's
Yeah.
also the balance of learning how to really be in my body and also trusting whatever it needs to flow in that moment and just mixing it both ways, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so earth signs, like we're very like practical on earth. Okay,
Exactly.
so if it's okay, I'm just going to dive a little bit deeper into some of your history. So you said that your eating disorder started when you were 13 years old. What did that look like for you? Like what were you experiencing at that time?
So when we were babies, I'm a twin actually. So
Yeah, I heard
when we
that.
were, yes. So when we were babies, my dad abandoned us, and then my mom, she was mom and dad for us for until up we were 13 years old. That's when I met my dad, and I found out like while I was going through recoveries when I realized that that's when all my eating disorders and all the control issues and panic attacks and fears started approximately. And I think that one of the things that really helped me understand why is that it started in that way is like I was this little girl that all her life was asking for her dad to come back, right? Like that was part of my story. Like this little girl had no idea why he left because he suddenly disappeared. And then I meet him when I'm 13. I have no idea who this guy is. He just comes out of nowhere and says, "Hey, I'm your dad. I just want to create a connection." I The way I handled the situation was a lot of resentment. A lot of resentment. I couldn't talk to him. I didn't know who he was. He never actually took responsibility of what happened, and he never said why he left. So my way of really try to build a relationship with him was creating that this identity of myself so I could be enough, because it was the only way that people would give me all these compliments. Like I started getting fitter, um I started doing all these diets, I started going deeper into that, realizing that I was getting more compliments. People were like telling me, "Oh wow, you're so fit, you look so good, you're losing weight." So I was like, okay, this is the way that I can get more attention. So I started going deeper. And at that time, when I just met my dad, he was with this girlfriend that at that moment she didn't know better, right? But her way of like connecting with me and my sister was telling us that we need to look better and we need to uh, eat in certain ways. And I'm 13 years old at that time. I see that the only person that my dad listens to, um she the only person that my dad is like connecting with is this girlfriend. So I want to be more like her so I can create a connection with him, right? That's what's going on in my head as a 13-year-old. So that's, I think, the moment when everything started to happen, when I just really needed to find some validation, because I felt like nobody else was going to give it besides me being just um, this image of myself that needed to have this identity attached to how I look and how I ate, and that's when everything started. And then years went by where I just like fell even deeper into that, and I had no way of handling, because my mom also was struggling with a lot at that time. My mom was, I mean, imagine it's like your husband suddenly disappears and comes back to your life, and you have all this frustration, you have all these feelings. So I always felt like all that frustration was my sister and my fault. Then you have a twin that they comparing you with all the time. So all these things around me made me create this part of myself that needed to find validation. So that's how everything
Yeah.
started. And then I just like was raised in Peru, and then at 25 is when I decided to move to the US. But that's pretty
Yeah.
There's a lot more going on, but that's a little bit of how it started.
No, but it makes perfect sense because, like, obviously, as the subconscious mind is being built out, like that abandonment that you're talking about, like, so the brain just like stores that and remembers it and in the back of your head. And it is, I love the way that you described it. It's so painful that like we don't ever want to revisit it. And the body just like stores that emotion. And so when you're 13 and you meet your dad, like, even though consciously as a 13-year-old, you're probably like, fuck you, dad. If you leave, I don't care. I don't know if you're like that. That's how I would be anyways. Even if that's your perspective, the subconscious mind is so powerful and so quiet. Like, and it literally rules everything that we do, that it is going to manifest every type of situation to prevent itself from being abandoned again. And so you're going like, okay, even like, you know, one person that dad loves in this moment is somebody who like values these things. Like, if this is important for like a man to think that I'm valuable, my dad, or for me to like not be abandoned, whether it's by like dad or a partner or even a friend group, then I'm going to do whatever I can to be able to like be this specific type of person to prevent that abandonment. Because when we're born as babies, we're completely helpless. And literally being abandoned as a baby will teach the subconscious mind that like it's not going to gain access to food. Like, that love and that like desire to not be abandoned is so much more important than any of our basic needs: food, water, shelter, sex, etc. Like, it literally governs everything. So it just makes perfect sense that that's how you encoded that. Hi, babes. I am so excited to talk to you about my signature program, the Mindful Method. This is the exact same method that I have been using with hundreds of successful clients to help you heal your relationship to food, to increase confidence, and to lose weight without dieting or killing yourself at the gym. If you're sick of not feeling like your best self, if you're sick of promising yourself that you'll start again on Monday, if you're sick of going on restrictive diets only to gain back the weight, I can tell you right now that if you gained it back, it did not work. You know what's healthy and what's not. You do. You just continue to choose the unhealthy option anyways. And a meal plan will not solve this issue. There is no amount of restriction or discipline or willpower that is going to stop you from self-sabotaging. The body follows the mind. Imagine a life where you don't have to think about what you can or can't eat. Imagine a life where you feel confident in all of your clothes, where every day in every way your body rebalances and you lose all of the weight so you find the truest, healthiest version of yourself. Imagine never having to start again on Monday. This is what happens when you focus on transforming the brain so weight loss is effortless. The body follows the mind, and it's time you actually get to the root cause of your issue. If you are ready to transform and find the truest, healthiest version of you without letting go of your favorite foods, I invite you to fill out the application in my bio. And if you're a good fit, we'll be in touch soon. Back to regular programming. I have a random question, but did your sister also struggle with these things?
I don't think it was such on a deeper level, but it was more like, so that's one of the things, like when you're a twin, you kind of don't create your own personality. You
Mm,
are always somebody else's sisters. It's like you are yourself, but she's next to you all the time. So everyone will compare us all the time. It's just like, oh, you are like this, but your sister is not, or you're like this and
yeah.
your sister is not. So you both create all these insecurities and why I'm not like her. And I feel
Mm,
like the moment we both decided to leave, because she first left and she went to New York, I went to San Francisco, like the opposite, right? But I think it was so important to be separate so we create our personality as individual. As me, Sabrina, her name is Camila, and she was able to create her own personality. I was able to create my own personality without her. And then we decided to meet again and go into this backpacking trip for 5 months together after not living together for a while. And then all these wounds would come to the surface, and we were like, oh my God, we have so much work to do. I didn't know I resent her so much, but now I love her with all my heart. She's everything for me. And I'd always loved her, but I never knew I had so much resentment towards her. and all the comments that we always we always got when we were kids, and also her. So I feel like she also developed a lot of, it was in a different way, right? Because my
Always.
sister, she was she was premature, she was born premature. So, and then the doctors told my mom that she needed to check on her because it could be that she could die any moment. So my mom
Mm.
always created that fear around something happening to my sister, but in the subconscious, she would always make her feel that she was not capable enough of doing everything that I was doing. And also unconsciously, she put that responsibility in me, that I had to take care of my sister and do everything for her constantly. So it was
Mm.
a constant trigger when we were backpacking together, where we had to make decisions all the time, her feeling that she was not capable and me trying to do things for her. So it's like, wow, this is a pattern that we have to break, right? And we need to understand why all these things are coming out to the surface. It's like, okay, this is not really the truth. It's just like something that was created based on the fear of my mom, not anything to happen to her. So I think like it's very interesting to understand like how a lot of the things are really, if you stop yourself to, and I think went far away from what was the question specifically
No,
about,
no, it's perfect. Yeah.
but I think like what I want to share about this is like sometimes we forget that a lot of the things that triggers us is really, if we stop ourselves from reacting, we have the time to make a decision and learn from that wound of why is that we're being triggered in this moment. And my
Mm.
sister helped me so much with that, because she's the person that triggered me the most for a long time, because we're like been together all our life, share the same room, share the same bed, share the same stories, share the same friends. So it's like you don't have anything on your own. So building that by myself in a foreign country was a really good experience for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I figured. I always love twins because you guys are like a crazy experiment. But I figured that she would encode it in a different way, like internalize the like different wounds in a different way, and it probably wouldn't be eating disorders similar to you. But I'm always curious to see like what how that dynamic goes. Um, okay, so you go to India, you experience all these different modalities. Likely, you probably felt at home in your body for the first time in your entire life. And then, so can you just communicate, if in the best way possible, because I know it's hard, but to our audience, like why do we separate from the body? And when it comes to like disordered eating, how do we come back? Like, and what does that feel like to people? I know it's a really like esoteric question, but just whatever comes to mind.
No, I love that question actually. I love going deep in this kind of subject, because it's very interesting. In my case, it really felt for a long time that I was living somebody else's life. Like, so to give you a little bit of context, before I went backpacking and I decided to go backpacking, I was gonna get married. And I was with this guy, Sebastian was his name, and he was from Peru too. He moved all the way to the States to be with me. And I knew at that moment that that was not what I wanted, but I still went through it because I needed to please everyone except myself. That's how I was
Mhm.
living all my life, pleasing everyone except myself, because I had no idea who I was. And like I said, I was very disconnected from myself and my body. So I allow every single decision in my life to be guided by what everyone wanted for myself. And what was the next step that made sense was to get married. And everything in my body, I knew that didn't want this decision in my life, but I still went through it. And of course, what was the next thing that happened? I had to sabotage it somehow. And how did it happen? I cheated on him, right? Right when
Mhm.
the wedding was going to happen. And
Mm.
everything was already paid for, everything was
Oh
already
my
there.
God.
So it was like, oh my God. And of course, I went and told him because there's a part of myself that felt so guilty. So I had to tell him. And then I think that was a very dark moment in my life. I felt so ashamed of myself and I felt so much guilt. I don't think I've ever experienced so much guilt. And it doesn't matter too much about what happened. I think I needed to go through that guilt and I needed to go through that shame for me to really to come to this other part and understand all the decisions that I made was really not who I was. So so in that moment when I'm like really deep in this hole is when I had like a decision that had to change everything for me. And
Mm.
just to come back to your question, that's why I stopped myself to think a little bit about it, because your question is like about like how do you come back to your body. I feel like there was this moment that I always remember that I was taking a bath and I really wanted to die, and that was the only choice. It was I die right now or I just do something about it, something completely different. So that was a very pivotal moment for me, because the only reason why I didn't choose to really take my life was because of everyone else. So I realized that
Mm.
how little I love myself, like how little I love myself that I had to choose to leave because I didn't want anybody else to not be happy and to miss me so much. So after that, I went backpacking, and I think in India, through meditation, it was the moment when I just by a single breath and just by learning how to breathe and come back to life and come back to the body and understand, wow, I really was living somewhere else. I was living somebody else's life. And I was in this position where I was able to close my eyes that I had never done in my life. And I was able to actually reconnect with every essence, every cell in my body, and really talk to myself and really talk to my body. And I feel like it's a practice. It's a practice of really learning how to listen to yourself. And the moment that's why I think meditation is so powerful, because it's not about doing it wrong or doing it right. Because a lot of people think like, oh, I have a lot of thoughts, I'm doing it wrong. No, that's not really what meditation is. Meditation is learning how to observe your thoughts and not react to them the same way you used to react in the past. And
Mhm.
that's the practice of meditation, coming back to your breath. So the moment where I felt that I really came back to myself, came back to my body, is when I came back to my breath, because I came
Mm.
back to like observing my thoughts and saying, hey, this mind that is there telling me all these things is not the master. I am the master, and I can tell the mind what to do. So that's the moment when I came back to my body and say, okay, this is who I am. And now I choose differently because I am the master of my life and not the mind that is telling me based on all the trauma that I've been through. So
Mhm.
that, I guess that answers a little bit of the question.
No, no, that's actually perfect because it's such a hard thing to communicate too. So as I'm asking you, I'm like, I'm looking for your insight because it's hard for me to be able to like verbalize this
Yeah.
entire experience. But I resonate so deeply with what you said because there have been multiple times in my life where like the only answer is it feels like the only answer is suicide. Like it's just like I don't want to live this life anymore. And though the reason why I didn't take my life wasn't necessarily because of other people. For me, it was probably because I was like too chicken or too scared. But at the end of the day, it's, we believe because as we walk around with the brain that we do, that we've always had, we believe that the things that are coming out of our head, the thoughts that we have, the behaviors that we do, we like really identify with those things. And because it's all we've ever known. And this essence that you're talking about, you called it the breath. And that might be totally correct. I think about it as like higher self soul. It's like, but like I guess you access that through the breath too. That's a very like Ayurvedic back type of way of looking at it, but it's like the human version of yourself that has had this like human existence that has created the mind that's created is so small compared to the potential of like who you really are, your soul, your highest potential. And so many people live their entire lives being run or ruled by the narrative that they have in their brain. And so being able to like observe yourself from that third party perspective and like come out of body, even though to come back into the body is actually a really difficult thing to be able to practice and to share and like and to help people go through. But I remember the moment it happened to me and it was just like something just clicked. And then it once I saw it from that perspective, I was like, oh my God, like this is who I am. And like I don't have to listen to that mind anymore. And of course, you know, depending on what happens through the day, like I'll pull from an example, but if you're like in a relationship and like someone says they're going to call and they don't call, it'll still like reinvigorate those wounds of, oh, I'm not good enough, they're going to abandon me, I'm getting rejected. And so like the human self comes in, but then when we're able to practice, like, and this is why it is a practice, meditation or whatever modality you're using, when we're able to practice to like have that experience of like, I feel wounded right now, but then see it from that like higher level perspective of like, okay, what is this trying to teach me? This isn't really me. Like, and you're able to actually move through these moments rather than stuffing them down in your body and like repurposing or re-exasperating them to happen again.
Yeah, I love exactly what you said right now because it's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, it's a practice, and a lot of
Mhm.
people think that every I think it's also the way we've been taught that everything has to be perfect, everything has to be certain way. And we just like a lot of the things that we do to try to be perfect is to protect ourselves from feeling the same way we used to feel, right? So
Yeah.
but I feel like that perfection is really reaching an unrealistic expectation of what is supposed to be our life. And I feel like embracing the not perfect parts of our life and knowing, hey, this is who I think I am, but really I'm choosing differently is a practice and it takes time. And that's why like the work that you do, the work that I do, and what we're sharing is so important because I feel like a lot of people think that it's just like when a moment everything changes and just I'm a completely different person. It's a process, it's a practice, it's coming back to that and choosing differently again and again and again. And is knowing the process is so messy, you know, like the
Mhm.
healing and connecting with yourself is really messy. And it's like I don't know if you're allowed to swear here, but
Yes,
like
definitely. Yeah.
backing it up
Yeah.
again and again and crying as many times as you want and knowing that that's good for you, because I feel
Yeah.
like we're also taught to not feel those emotions because they're negative and quote unquote, right? Like a lot of people tell us, oh, you that they teach us that way when we were kids. When a kid is crying, what do? Try for him not to cry, try and
Yeah.
for him not to be that way. But it's like there's a reason why we need to cry in this moment. There's a reason why I need to cry in this moment. There's a reason why I'm feeling angry. Is because that emotion is trying to tell me something. But sometimes
Mhm.
what happens is like we are taught that that's a negative way of feeling, so we shouldn't feel this way. So okay, let's do something to try to distract myself from feeling that way. What do? Okay, let's watch this movie. Let's do this, which is there's nothing wrong with doing so all those things if that makes you happy. But if try to think about like why is that you're actually making that decision, why is that you're
Mhm.
actually trying to do that in this moment, because you're actually trying not to feel or because you
Mhm.
just want to do it because it's what you feel like doing. So I feel like questioning those things every day and also practicing learning how to listen to ourselves is key, is the most important thing. And it's like I said, is being honest with ourselves and knowing that it's not always perfect, and that's the beauty of it, because we're humans and we're trying to reach things that are really not as important as listening to ourselves. So I think that's
Mhm.
that's the biggest message for me, to listen to ourselves.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because every client that I deal with, and I'm sure the same for you, but every single person who comes to me does not trust themselves enough to listen to themselves. You know, they would like so much rather buy a 99-day like carnivore diet program so someone else can tell them how they're supposed to eat than like
Yeah.
actually tap into their body. Because what's happened over the past however many years is they've not been able to trust themselves in situations, and they've like, you know, made promises themselves, not been able to keep it because of the trauma, not because of desire or whatever. They've self-sabotaged, they've done whatever, that they like lose trust within themselves, right? And so how do you like teach somebody to li I guess the question is, because I'm always trying to tell my clients, like, your body wants to be healthy. Like it's the mind that go like the body act. And so, but how do you teach your clients then to actually like listen to that inner voice, and being able to distinguish between like what is the true, like my true voice versus like what is ego or what is like self-sabotage or and I'll just give you an example here, but literally right before this call, I was running around, I was late, 15 minutes late, and I hadn't really eaten much today. So I was like just trying to shovel things in my mouth. And I'm staying at my parents right now. So I passed this like big chocolate bar that I brought on a plane. And I was like, I want a piece of chocolate. And like, I'm at a point in my life where like, if I want a piece of chocolate, I'm going to have a piece of chocolate. But like, if for my clients or people who are not as far along in their healing journey, like they might have the desire, they might have the thought, I would like to have this piece of chocolate. How can they distinguish if that thought is coming from a place of like, this is my true voice versus like, this is like self-sabotage?
I love that question. It's so interesting that you said that, because I feel like that's the reason why I said that it requires a lot of practice,
Yeah.
because it's repeating the same mistakes, and sometimes eating that piece of chocolate is exactly what you need to
Yeah.
break that fear, because
Mm,
like, for example, in my case, I had so much fear around eating ice cream. Like,
mm,
it was my biggest fear, right? And for some people, it's like it could be something completely different. But how is the way that you actually learn to break that fear and understand what is your true self? By doing it, by knowing
mm,
that nothing's gonna happen in that moment, right? Nothing's gonna happen. And the more you do it, the more you realize that a lot of the cravings were created because you were restricting yourself for so long. So
yeah.
that's why you're gonna crave it every single day. For me, my process of recovery, maybe for a whole month, I had to wake up and eat something sweet every morning, because I didn't allow to eat sweet for so long that it was what I needed to keep like repeating myself every single day until I didn't desire that anymore. I think that's what
Mm,
it is, like repeating all these things every single day are gonna allow you to differentiate and know exactly what is that you actually need and what is just that part of yourself that is so scared that you're gonna limit yourself again. But it's repetition and being consistent and repeating the same mistakes. Every mistakes, I would say, quote unquote, because it's not a mistake at the end, right? But like, it's
mhm.
feeding yourself and being consistent with the same things that scare you so much, so you learn what is really the truth of your voice and what is just that part of yourself that is full of fear.
As we're working this through, I'm like, I'm figuring it out in my head too. But I actually think that the behavior doesn't really matter. Like the eating the chocolate or not eating the chocolate doesn't really matter. What matters is the narrative you have about it. Right. So it's like, you know, eat the chocolate or don't eat the chocolate. But if you eat the chocolate and then you beat yourself up afterwards, or you tell yourself that's bad or whatever, then like that's actually the part of you that's not really you, because you is always in highest love, right? And so if you eat the chocolate and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I really loved that experience. Like I'm so grateful that like my body knows how to digest this," or whatever it is, then like that's highest self talking. That's like the true you. If you decide to not eat the chocolate, like in my case, I work mostly with binge eaters, right? So if they decide to not eat the chocolate, and it's not from a place of like, I'm going to restrict myself, like I'm not allowed to have any sugar, but they actually face their fear and try to work past a craving and not just act on every single craving. So if they decide to not eat the chocolate, recognizing that, like, hey, nothing bad is going to happen if we leave that chocolate for later. Like, I can leave it for 5, 10 minutes and come back to it. And then the narrative around, if the narrative is then, oh, I'm not allowed to have sweets, I'm going to like not eat any sugar for the next 7 days, then we're feeding into like the self-sabotage versus like, wow, I'm so proud of myself. It was so easy to like leave that chocolate in the cupboard. Like, so I'm actually just putting this together as we're talking. But I think overall, your inner voice or the highest self is always going to be like a loving voice. And then anything else can be pretty destructive.
Yeah, I love that you said that, and like it's so amazing that you put it together because yeah, it's about how you talk to yourself, like not the action itself, like you say.
Mhm.
It's about like how do you choose to create a different narrative and a different story about the
Mhm.
decision that you're making in that moment because you're creating a new personality because that's exactly who you are. So it's just like is how you create compassion, and that's the true your true self, right? Like your higher self is going to come from a place of compassion and not judgment. And if you're
Mhm.
having compassion for the decision that you made, it makes you so proud. Like for example, in your case, if it's if for that's why I say for it means completely different. For me, it was breaking the fear of eating ice cream, but for somebody else, it could be, wow, I was able to have a chocolate in my counter for like a month and forgetting about it,
Yeah.
and it was the
Yeah.
best thing that I did for myself. So it's just like, and being proud of and having compassion for yourself for like making that decision. And that is progress. That is like realizing that is step by step and choosing differently every time.
Yeah. Yes, beautiful. I'm so glad we worked this one out. For everyone who's listening, who are my clients, like you might want to save this podcast. But I also just think because you said this multiple times, it's the fear, right? And so I'm just gonna pull from that example of like you're in a relationship, boyfriend doesn't call or whatever. Like the fear voices are like, he's gonna leave me, he doesn't love me, da da da. And like that, even if that's true, even if he leaves you, doesn't love you, whatever, like it doesn't actually matter. What matters is like if it's a fear-based thought, it's probably not your higher self, it's not your breath, it's not the soul. If it's like a loving thought, then it probably is. Super helpful.
Yes, I mean, it's really helpful because you realize that a lot of the things that you're telling yourself is just based on the story that you've been through, and especially
Mhm.
the trauma that you've been through. And that's
Mm.
why we're triggered by different things. You can be triggered about something completely different than me. That for example, the other day I was with someone and I was just with one of my friends and I was doing everything super fast, and I realized that I always move really fast. And he said, oh my God, slow down. It looks like you're in a war zone. And that comment triggered so many things. But for somebody else, it would have been like they would have laughed and left, right? And I just like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, he's an asshole. And then I'm like, just walking and I'm, wow, I think this is just me. It's just for so long, I struggled so much with slowing down, resting, taking the time to really not having to overdo and do so many things. And that was sharing with my community that yesterday, because that's why that small comment that for maybe nobody else would have done anything, but for me was so important. And I even told him the next day, I told him like that comment triggered me, and I think it was just me. And I was able to reflect back into that and knowing that, wow, that's because of something that I've been through. And it's like maybe that I can work on this but for myself. So it's just like, and that's the voice of your, like what we're talking about, your higher self. It's like, how do I use this and this trigger and this comment to be better about myself and to grow and know that, and have compassion for yourself too, like
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
the balance of both.
Yeah. No, beautiful. So beautiful. Okay. So you mentioned that you have a bunch of different certifications and like energy work and and so like what types of modalities do you use with your clients? Just yeah, to paint me a little picture around that.
Yeah, of course. So what I do is like it's called intuitive rebirth method. It's an
Oh.
energy healing method. It's called intuitive rebirth because it's very intuitive with what the client needs in that moment. We
Mhm.
use channeling to understand where the energy is stuck in the body. So that's the session. The before the session starts, we do that, and then during the session is basically working in releasing all the energy that is stuck in the body by coming back to those emotions that were not felt during that time. So
Mm.
it's very intuitive because it's what needs to be worked in that moment and what needs to come out in that moment. Sometimes not everything's gonna come out. It's just like it's a process of different sessions. So that's why we have to do the pre-channeling. I have to do the pre-channeling to understand what is the energy that is ready to be released, and what is the energy to is ready to come to that person to be birthed into something else. So we work into that, and naturally the body is gonna release through the mouth. So in any way. It could be like singing, it could be like really screaming, it would be coughing, it could be burping, it could be like anything through the mouth because the energy has to come out in any way. So that's what I do. And I use different tools, different methods, breathing, channeling, sound healing, meditation, and those are the one-on-one sessions that I work with clients. And then I also have a fourth month program that is like called rewire, actually, because it's about
Nice.
rewiring our brain and really create more peace, ease, and release anything that is not serving us, because it's like is attached to all patterns that are not letting us be who we are and connect with our true essence. So that's what I like, what I do right now. And I do things in person and things online, but
Mhm.
it's basically what I do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you work virtually?
Yes. So
Yeah.
all the sessions are virtually mostly, and I have some clients here and there that prefer in person here in San Francisco, but I have clients from all over the world. So I have clients from Indonesia too. I just had a client that went through Rewire for 4 months, and she's from Indonesia. So yeah, people from Peru because I'm from Peru. So I do in Spanish as well. So, but mostly in English. But yes, both for if somebody's listening that prefer in Spanish, just so you know, I do
Ye
Spanish too.
yeah, that's me. I just came back from El Salvador, so
Oh,
I'm
nice.
like my hablos inglese, no españolo. But no, but a lot of most of my community is in the States, so a lot of them are like bilingual. So that actually is really helpful. And it sounds incredible. Like as you were saying this, I was like, oh, I need to book a session. So I'll look through your stuff after this call. No, but I love exploring new modalities, and I'm going through a massive transition in my own life right now. So I mean I have been for the past 6 months. I think we're on the end of it, hopefully.
Yes.
But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I feel like I could talk to you forever. We're so similar. That's probably why Natalie connected us. But I would love for you to just share with my audience where they can find you, where they could book a session with you. And then we'll link everything up in the show notes.
Yeah, of course. So my last name is a little hard, but it's Sabrina Vega Adawi, and you find it is Sabrina V Adawi. We're gonna write everything in there. That's my Instagram, but you're gonna find there the link tree with all my programs, all my offerings. Any way that you can find me is through Instagram. I really like post everything in there. I was never a huge social media person. That's why I started through Instagram and slowly building the relationship back. But yeah, you can find anything in there, and also my website is gonna be linked there as well.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Sabrina. It was lovely to have you on. If you guys like this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with a friend who might need it. And I'll see you back on another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. Bye.